All right, and we are back with more Thursday D&D. Let's pick right up where we left off, shall we? The group has just finished clearing out Cantilever's Cove, rescuing this strange young woman named Malty. Athalia has rejoined the group with a contingent of guards from the city of Rabarstvo, and a druid named Ito has wandered out from further in the depths of the caverns, unknowingly having assisted the group. Having freed Malty from her cage as she eyes Pickles up and down seductively, noting how late it's getting in the day, the group decides to long rest right there within the cove. Pickles follows Malty off towards Cantilever's room as the rest of the group beds down in the prison area where they had found Malty. What happens next is a bit of RP that I will not get into, but Pickles decides to spend the night with Malty, and in doing so, rolls a series of Constitution saving throws, of which he fails 2 of 4. So he ends his long rest not having got a long rest, and with 3 levels of exhaustion. I'm using the new exhaustion rules that they have been discussing in the 5e update, 5e, 5.5, 1D&D, whatever they're going to want to call it. I like how each level of exhaustion in the new system incurs a -1 to any roll you make, up to 10, at which point you die. It's a lot easier to remember than the exhaustion rules in the player's handbook. That's just my opinion. But anyway, he ends with 3 levels of exhaustion. No long rest for him. None of his stuff has reset. And the rest of the group, they've been having to make some saving throws to be able to maintain their long rest, because it's not been quiet in the cave. But they wake up in the morning, most of them refreshed, to having discovered that Ito and the contingent of guards that came with Athalia are gone. They have apparently left back for Rabarsvo as soon as possible, and they're nowhere to be seen. So the group, having reconvened, head back towards Rabarsvo with Malty. On the way back to Rabarsvo, coming up over the hill from the coast, they encounter some of the bandits that had escaped the cove during the fight. Remember, Mycelia had charmed one of the guys, and he opted to leave, and he cleared out the other half of the cove with him when he left. So he has apparently rallied more men and is coming back in force with numbers to take out the party. Initiative was rolled, and as we move down the initiative line, the group is able to take out 1 or 2 bandits before we get to Malty, and then she unleashes this horrendous blast, which annihilates 75% of the group of pirates. Shocking the pirates, shocking the party. They've really had some weird feelings about Malty since they encountered her at the cage, and this is just a revelation that there is more to her than they realize. It's not long that they're able to finish cleaning up this little group of bandits, especially after Malty's assistance, and that they get back towards the gates of Rabarsvo. Now, Magic Customs comes back into play here because the city is on lockdown, and as the mage casts Detect Magic, they give Malty some really curious looks. They tell the group that Malty is going to have to come with them, to which Malty doesn't seem to object, and this is where we end that particular session, with Malty splitting from the party. So, going on from the gate at the next session, they head back up towards the Silver Complex. And as they arrive, they can see Sora Atoll, the Silver Dragonborn, who is heading the complex in the Silver's absence, and Ananar, the Vidalcan, they are having a conversation with this rather plain looking man in a ornate crimson robe. He's seated in this really fine brown chair, possibly carved out of like mahogany with red velvet cushions. And they're having this conversation with this individual. And as the party enters the silver complex, this man he begins shrieking. The chair disappears and he collapses to the ground, just screaming about terrible pains in his head. As the party runs forward, there's a glint from this man as a horse appears and teleports this individual away. Stunned at the proceedings, the party, Ananar, Sora, no one really knows exactly what has just happened. There's a brief moment of just confusion before questions begin to get answered. Ito has returned prior with this contingent and informed Sora and Ananar what had gone on, and they are grateful to the group for their intervention and for dealing with this threat. And as thanks, they are eager and willing to commission a small, fast vessel to head westward so that the group can continue pursuing the silver and determine exactly where they went and what happened to them. They present the group with this item that apparently this wizard had brought with them. It's a tuning fork, and if you, while holding it, say the name of an individual, the tuning fork points in the direction of their location. Not revealing it, but pointing you towards them. So they begin inquiring about who this individual was, and Sora and Ananar explained that they were due for an update regarding the Silver's absence with a member of the Arcanum, and they were expecting an individual called the Hue Shifter to arrive to be bringing this object and looking for more information, bringing them whatever they might have learned. But instead it was this other individual known as the Chronicler. For whatever reason, the Hue Shifter had refused to return to Rabarstvo. And so the Chronicler had came instead. They apparently hadn't dealt with this guy a whole lot. They know kind of who he was, but not much about him. So when he started freaking out and then disappeared with this horse, they just really didn't know what to do with it. But they give this tuning fork over to the party and send them off with the promise of this small, fast boat that's going to be able to break them out of Rabarstvo off of the coast headed westward. So the group, they meet up the very next day, and they all board up on this boat, and they start sailing outwards. Not too long after they've been in the water, a young silver dragon approaches the vessel, inquiring about their purpose out in the bay. Ever since the city's been under this naval siege, no one's been allowed out, which is one of the reasons that Rabarstvo is struggling. They haven't been able to do their trade with the other cities across the ocean. So once the Silver Dragon is updated on what's exactly going on and who these people are, it just kind of wishes them safe passage and returns to its patrol in the bay. It's one of the reasons, these young silver dragons are one of the reasons why these boats aren't getting any closer. However, there's not enough of them that they could actually go and make a difference to turn away this fleet. So the boat continues westward for another couple hours, and as they break the line and get out into deep water, completely passing the range at which this naval incursion, could bother them, they see these they see more silver flashes in the water, but these ones are tinged red. And leaping out of the water towards the group up at this boat are 3 silver wormlings whose scales, some of their scales, they've got these patches of red scales where the silver should be. A fight breaks out, of course, and it's not long before the party is able to subdue and defeat the 3 wormlings, but in the process, they discover that these dragons have these coins embedded in their scales, and it's around these coins that the red scales are growing. It's almost transmuting their silver scales into red scales. They free a few of these coins, and Ido takes one back to Rabarstva with him to have it checked out. It's at this point that Ido does head back to Rabarstvo, and that is where we end that session. The next session we start the next day for the group, having they've defeated these wormlings. They're out in open water. They go to the captain to get information on just how long they're going to be out at sea and exactly where they're heading. And so the captain is able to inform them that they're headed to a town called Vonkavi, and that's all the provisions that the ship has to make it that far. There is another city further up the coast north that they could go to, but they're not stocked to get there. The goal was just to get from Rabarstvo to Vonkavi as quickly as possible. And they begin wondering that if heading northward might save them time on their trip across Will, that maybe they should go north to help shave off a few days on land, even if it would take them another couple days on water. Because heading north might shave them a substantial amount of time off of their trip across the continent. So they hatch a plan to do some fishing. They have some leftover bait from the lion, and so they begin hacking that up, and the group of them begin fishing off of the boat to try and see if they can catch anything. So I was having everyone roll 2d6s to see what they could catch, and I would let them choose the die that they wanted to use. Well, as they're fishing, one of them gets a bite. Mycelia gets a huge bite. They've been spending most of the day fishing to no result, and Pickles has gone below deck to rest, and he is frustrated. Pickles has been frustrated ever since the city of Rabarstvo with the terms of this deal that he has made. He's not sure what he's signed on to, and he's getting desperate to learn. So he has gone below deck to try and figure out exactly what is going on with him and this book, while Mycelia and Frank continue fishing. Well, Pickles gets a revelation. It is revealed to him that the book is tied to this powerful individual, and that this individual requires him to make a daily payment in the form of a humanoid life, and that if he doesn't, he loses hit points. To learn this information, though, he has to pay a substantial amount of his hit points to this individual. And it brings him from about 24 hit points down to 12 as a 5th level character. It is a really hard hit. And learning this, though, he decides to take out one of the crew members of the boat so that he won't be subject to the negative sides of this deal that he has made. So as he is doing this, the other two, Frank and Mycelia, are continuing fishing, and Mycelia hooks this large fish, which pulls her down into the dark water. Remember, they had been fishing all day. It's nighttime now. And she gets pulled underwater and sees this giant, dark figure in the ocean. Frank dives in after her, and Pickles is walking back up to the deck with the body of this sailor that he had just dealt with so that he wouldn't face the negative repercussions of his deal. So with all of this happening wildly at once, everyone rolls initiative. And Mycelia goes first. She opts to cast Animal Friendship, I believe. But the problem is she's underwater, and so she loses her oxygen as she casts this spell because it has a verbal component, and water begins to fill her lungs, and she becomes incapacitated. The spell does work on the beast, but she is now drowning, just floating in the ocean, unable to give any kind of direction to whatever this creature might be. Frank, having tied himself off to the boat, plummets into the water and immediately sinks all the way down to the furthest length of his rope and begins looking around to find Mycelia, slowly pulling himself up the rope as this massive beast begins to attack him. Pickles, seeing all of this happen, dives in the water as well, but he has one benefit. He's invisible. When he had been below deck and attacked that sailor, after he had finished them off, he had picked up their body and cast invisibility, because it works on you and anything you're carrying. So he had dumped the sailor off the side of the boat invisibly, and now he dives into the water. But getting underneath the waves now, he decides to attack this massive shark, striking it and losing his invisibility. The shark roils and turns and snaps at Pickles and Frank, and it hits both of them. Frank is unscathed by this, but unfortunately Pickles is bitten in half and instantly killed. The fact that the shark cannot eat Frank does help deter the shark from attacking him further. And he is able to find Mycelia before she drowns and is able to pull her up the rope with just enough time to throw her above deck. As I throw her above deck, she has the highest initiative count with a 21, I believe. 20, I believe. And there are 4 sailors on deck. And so I roll 4 initiatives for the sailors, and I get a 1, a 2, a 3, and a 19. And the sailors, being quite dexterous, the one who got high enough is able to grab her and begin life-saving measures so that she no longer has to make death-saving throws, which she hasn't been. She's just been failing them automatically because she's been drowning underwater. But Frank is able to finally pull himself up, but with no Pickles in sight, as the shark has consumed Pickles and his entire body. There is a horrible wrenching in the water, though, as the shark is twisted and torn and ripped in two from a set of massive claws that come from inside the beast. It's at this point that Frank and Mycelia decide that they are done fishing. They're not going to keep, they're just going to go to Vonkavi and they're going to be happy about it. Meanwhile, although Pickle's body is gone, he awakes and he's in a jar. He can see through glass, and there is a faint light off in the distance. He can see a figure walking, getting up out of a chair and walking across the room towards this jar that he seems to be in. But he feels light, like air. He doesn't seem to have a body. There's a voice that says, "Ah, this happened sooner than I had thought. and the jar is lifted and carried across the room, and there is a statue in front of this chair, this gray statue, this carved into the form of a dragon. This terrible, terrible beast with sharp fangs and rough, spiny scales like barbs coming off of its body. And the jar is opened and tipped out towards the dragon, and he can feel himself falling towards this statue. And then he is gone. And that is where we end the session. Thank you all. I really hope you've enjoyed this recap. I'm so grateful for your patience as I get caught back up on our sessions. I do have a few more to go. The group does make it to Vonkavi, so we'll pick back up right there as they make landing. I'm not good with nautical terms. But thank you so much. The schedule with the group is changing a little bit, and you might have said, wait, where was Athalia and all of that? And it appears that Athalia had left with Edo to go back to Rabarstvo. The player was having a bit of some uncertainty if they wanted to continue with the game, and so they decided to take a step back, and that is okay. D&D is not a game for everyone. I love playing it. I want to make my table a fun, exciting, and welcoming place, but everyone has their own cup of tea, and I'm not going to guilt or shame anyone. If this is a hobby that you decide isn't for you, you shouldn't feel like you have to sit there and finish it out. Okay? It's a game. It's about having fun. If you're not having fun, if you're not having a good time, don't play. Life is short. Do something you enjoy. Anyway, thanks, guys. Have a great night. Is it Thursday yet? I don't know if I can say that anymore. We might be changing our schedule to Friday. Is it Friday yet? We'll find out next time.